Nous avons la chance d'avoir parmi nous Mustafa BARGHOUTI, qui est président du PMRS, une ONG médicale, mais qui a un grand rôle en Palestine. Et je ne vais pas parler plus, c'est lui que vous venez d'entendre. Donc, je lui passe le micro via Marianne Blume, qui va un petit peu diriger tout ça.
Première chose, nous sommes très honorés au nom de Hope de recevoir le docteur Mustafa BARGHOUTI, que beaucoup d'entre nous ont rencontré à Ramallah ou ailleurs. C'est la première chose. C'est l'organisation Hope qui a fait l'invitation et c'est la fondation Liebman qui a accueilli cette conférence. Alors, la fondation Hope, je pense que la plupart qui sont ici savent de quoi il s'agit. On m'a quand même demandé de dire en 3 mots ce que c'était. Donc, c'est une association qui aide des étudiants palestiniens en Palestine qui ont des problèmes économiques ou sociaux. Alors, ils collaborent avec l'Arab American University qui se trouve à Zebabdeh, la ville de Naïm Kader, avec Al-Quds University à Abu Dis, qui est pour l'instant séparée de Jérusalem-Est, et une école de travailleuses de la santé communautaire qui dépend du PMRS. Alors, le Hope ne choisit pas eux-mêmes, ils ne choisissent pas eux-mêmes les étudiants, mais font appel à des comités qui, eux, connaissent la situation et qui suggèrent le nom de certains étudiants. Les bourses, quand même, s'élèvent jusqu'à 80% du montant total, ce qui est assez bien. Donc ça, c'est pour Hope. Maintenant, pour la chaire ou pour l'Institut Marcel Liebman, je pense aussi que vous savez plus ou moins que c'est une institution qui vise à réfléchir les mouvements sociaux, à réfléchir sur ce qu'est le socialisme et à donner des perspectives sur la politique actuelle. Et donc, l'Institut Marcel Liebman accueille avec plaisir la conférence de M. BARGHOUTI. M. BARGHOUTI, c'est à vous. Si vous pouviez nous faire un petit résumé de la situation en Palestine pour que nous puissions après vous poser des questions.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I am very pleased today to meet many friends. I think I know almost all of you. And we met many times in Palestine, sometimes here in Belgium, but mostly in Palestine. So I want to thank you all for what you do. I want to thank you for your commitment to Palestine. I want to thank you for your solidarity and for believing in us. And it really gives us a lot of courage to see that there is a strong solidarity still going on and that you are still committed to Palestine. I want to thank Hope also for organizing this and also for the students they are helping. They also help some of our medical relief nurses who are studying to be community health workers. So thank you for that. I want to thank each of you, but especially I want to thank also Daniel Dakkak for his great commitment. This man is helping kindergarten in Palestine since 1994, personally. So thank you, Daniel, for all your support. And thank you, Pierre Galland, for also what you've done and for all the friends here. I think I should, I don't have the possibility to name each one of you, but I think please take it as a very special thank you to every one of you for everything you do. Thank you. I wanted to show you a presentation, but it's not working. But it doesn't matter much because I think a lot of what I wanted to show you, you already know. The important thing is to analyze the existing new situation in Palestine. And I've been meeting with officials from the European Union yesterday and today and tomorrow, trying to explain very serious matters. The first one is that the two-state solution is dying. if it is not already dead. I wrote an article in The Guardian on the 15th of May this year, the day of the Nakba, and in which I explained that because of Israeli illegal settlements and the silence of the world, the two-state solution is disappearing. And that what we live in today is a situation of one state, but not any state. We live in a reality of one apartheid state. And it is a system of apartheid. Nobody can deny that, especially after the reports of Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even the Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem. I don't need to prove that to you. I think you are convinced. But when on average, Israel takes away, just one example, they take away 85% of our water in the West Bank and allow Palestinians to use no more than 50 cubic meters of water per year, while Israeli illegal settlers are allowed to use 2,400 cubic meters per year, 48 times more than Palestinians. I think that's an enough indicator. When we have segregated roads in the West Bank where highways, not in Israel, but in the West Bank, highways are exclusive for Israelis, and if we drive or walk on them, we can be put in jail for 6 months. That's another indicator. But we are passing now through a more dangerous situation because of this terrible Israeli extreme fascist government. It should be called fascist government. And they are now expanding settlements at an unprecedented rate. 13,000 new units were already approved. Yesterday alone, the day before yesterday, they approved 5,623 units. They declared they are building 15 new settlements. Before, during the last 10 years, there were expansion of settlements, but no government dared to declare that they will build new settlements. Now they are doing it, 15 new settlements, but Smotrich said they're planning to build 70 new settlements. The reality is they announced 15 new settlements, including 4 that were dismantled by Sharon, if you remember, when he withdrew from Gaza, dismantled 4 small settlements in Jenin. Now they're rebuilding them. And they allowed last week 7 new outposts by Israeli settlers themselves. So in reality, we have already 151 settlements. They want to add not 70 new settlements. They want to legalize every settlement outpost, which means they want to add 171 new settlements. That leaves nothing in the West Bank. And I am convinced that what they do in West Bank is nothing different at all from what they did in 1948 in what they call proper Israel. When Israel was established in 1948, the Palestinians owned, at that time, 82% of the land of what became Israel. Today, they own only 3.5%. That process, through laws, through stealing, through settlements, through aggression, through violence, that's exactly what they are repeating now in the West Bank, because already 60% of the West Bank is Area C, is completely for settlements. We are not allowed to build a school or a clinic or a kindergarten or a house in Area C. During the last 10 years, Israel allowed 9,600 structures for Israeli settlers and only 330 for Palestinians. But this new government says not a single house or structure will be allowed in Area C from now on. Even the schools that were built by the European Union were demolished and are being demolished, and the European Union does not do anything about it, although it's your money, it's your taxpayers' money, because the European Union, as I was told, does not have sticks when it comes to Israel. It only has carrots. And the reality of today is that we have one apartheid state, unprecedented level of expansion of settlements, and in my opinion, the only alternative to one apartheid state is one democratic state with complete equal rights on the land of all of historic Palestine. And that's why in our, somebody asked me to speak about PNI, I will do that later. But in our last Congress, we decided that we recommend to the Palestinian National Movement that they should change their goal and say it should not be only ending occupation, but also it should be, in addition to ending occupation, bringing down the whole system of apartheid in the whole of Palestine. Because apartheid is affecting not only Palestinians in the occupied territories, but also Palestinians who live in Israel itself. As some wise Israeli leaders before expected, occupation will become the cancer that eats Israel from within. This is exactly what is happening. But nobody listened to these leaders. Occupation produced settlements. And settlements produced apartheid. Now apartheid is producing fascism. I am not exaggerating when I say fascism, because Smotrich, the second most important minister in Israel, or the third most important, the one who is the Minister of Finance, and the man who was assigned to become practically the governor of the West Bank, the Israeli government gave him the full responsibility of legalizing settlements in the West Bank. This man said he called himself a fascist homophobe. I'm not inventing that. You can Google it. He also said, we will fill the West Bank with settlements and settlers so that Palestinians would lose any hope of having a state of their own. And then they will have to choose between one of three things: either to immigrate, or to accept a life of subjugation to the Israelis, or die and become, as he said, shuhada, shaheeds. This man, I mean, again, I'm not inventing that. You can just Google it. You can find it everywhere. All these statements were never negated or criticized by Netanyahu, for instance. I didn't hear, I don't know if she's Miss or Mrs., let's say Ms. von der Leyen. I never heard her criticizing these kinds of statements. Although she was advocating Israel as the country that transformed desert and that made desert bloom. We were desert before Israeli Zionist movement. And although she said that Israel is a democracy, I don't know how a country can be a democracy when it is practicing apartheid. Smotrich is a settler. He himself lives in a settlement called Kadumim on the land of the village of Kufr Qaddum near Qalqilia. His other partner is Ben-Gvir, who is also a settler, living in Kiryat Arba settlement near Hebron. Ben-Gvir was classified as terrorist because he belonged to Kah Kahana movement, which was classified in Israel and the United States as terrorist organization. He declared more than once that his ideal person in the world is Baruch Goldstein, who was an Israeli physician settler who killed 26 Palestinians in the Ibrahimi Mosque while they were praying in 1994. Ben-Gvir just declared, he said yesterday, he said, we killed 120 Palestinians this year. We want and we should kill more. In another occasion, he said we should kill thousands of Palestinians. And this man is in charge of police. He's the internal security minister in Israel. He's in charge of police, border police. He is in charge of prisons where Palestinians prisoners are kept. He's in charge of what happens in the Aqsa Mosque. So the settlements, the number of settlers who was 121,000 in 1993 is today 750,000. They have become, that's why I say it's the cancer, because they have become a very decisive political force in Israel. They have 15 members in the Israeli Knesset, and they have 7 other members from Likud party who are in total agreement with them. So these guys have 22 members in the parliament out of 120, and they have very important positions now. They have the minister of settlements. They have the governor of West Bank, practically Smotrich, and minister of finance, and then you have Ben-Gvir. So that's why Israel is moving not only to extremism, it's moving to fascism. No country in the world has attacked civilian population who are resisting occupation with a war, a full-fledged war like they did recently in Jenin using F-16 jet fighters and Apache helicopters and armored vehicles against civilian people in Jenin. Nobody did that before except Nazis and fascists. They are trying to repeat what they did to us in 2002 when the Israeli tanks reinvaded the West Bank. And if you need no more statements, I'll give you Netanyahu's statement recently. He said, anybody who struggles against us will end up in prison or in the grave, and most probably in the grave. But that is not the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous thing that has happened during the last 2 months, but especially last week, was the terrorist settlers' attacks on Palestinian civilian population. I wanted to show you some videos that shows what they did. First, they did it in Huwara, when hundreds, imagine, we are in occupied territory. We are not allowed to carry guns. If they find us carrying a gun, we will go to prison. The population of Huwara is a civilian population. Suddenly, they found 450 settlers attacking them with the protection of the army. And these settlers who are armed started burning the houses of people and their cars, and people didn't know what to do. I was so touched. I saw an old man who was 82 years old. He told me, I was with my daughter inside the house. We didn't know what to do. They were surrounding the house from all directions, putting fire in it, and I thought we will burn to death. And the army was watching. Then in Tormos Aya this week, they attacked this village, which has nothing to protect itself with. Again, 400 settlers came from 4 directions and set houses in fire, as well as cars, and destroyed trees, burned fields, and the army was watching. And when young people from other villages came to protect the people in Tormos Aya with stones, not with guns, the army started shooting them and killed a young man called Umar Qatin. They shot him in the chest and killed him. The army. In another village in Safa, I was there before I came, one day before I came. Again, it's a small community where 800 people live there. They have a settlement near them, illegal. The settlement want to take over their land and they don't want to leave. And these settlers, they gathered hundreds and then attacked them and started burning their houses. A woman told me she was with 5 of her children inside the house, and the house started to burn. She took her children to the bathroom and opened the water. That's the only thing she could do. And she thought they could die and burn to death. Their house was completely burned. We remember cases like Muhammad Abu Khdair, who was kidnapped by settlers. He was a little boy, a little young boy who was kidnapped by settlers. They forced gasoline in his mouth, and then they burned him alive. We had a family in Douma, near Nablus, who were also attacked and their house burned. The father, the mother, and one of the children died. And the last one, the one who stayed alive, was burned in most of his body. So what is happening? They are trying to repeat to us what happened in 1948. Terrorism, attacks on people so that people would leave. So I'm telling you that this is not the last chapter of what they are planning. They are not only planning settlements and killing the two-state solution, they are trying to terrorize us so that we would leave, because the only solution in Israel for apartheid is to force Palestinians out of the country. We are threatened with a new ethnic cleansing. That's what I want you to understand. And that is very dangerous. And for the first time since 1967, one community already left their homes. It's a small one, but for me, this is very dangerous. In a place called Ain Samia, where the Israeli settlers kept attacking them, then eventually nobody is protecting them, and they left. That's the level of how risky the situation is. And this is happening in front of the world, which says they cannot use sanctions against Israel. And I think nobody can now continue to cheat us with talks about two-state solution if they do not impose immediately sanctions on Israel. Why this double standard? In the case of Russia, 11,000 sanctions were put in place in 2 months. Not a single sanction was ever used against Israel for the last 75 years. Here we have occupation, we have settlement building, we have violation of international law. At least the European Union should sanction the settlements. At least, you know how many Palestinian leaders they are boycotting because they claim they are terrorists. At least they should ban meetings with a person like Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And I ask you, you have to exercise this pressure here in Belgium and in other places. I know they will always have the excuse that Hungary will not allow us to have a collective decision. Come on, take it one country after the other. It's very dangerous and it's not business as usual. And on the other hand, I want to tell you that we as Palestinians are more resilient than any time before. And the younger generation in Palestine is even more determined not only to stay in Palestine, but also to struggle and fight back against this terrible oppression. And these young boys and young men and young women don't buy this whole bullshit about Oslo Agreement and the negotiations. They know and realize that this was an illusion. And they know and they realize that the biggest mistake that was made in Oslo Agreement was to sign an agreement with Israel without at least, as we demanded then, me and Hayder Abdel Shafi and others, at least to demand complete and total stop of settlement building, which unfortunately did not happen. So I'm telling you, the Palestinians are resilient. We will not leave our country. We will not allow another Nakba again. We will not allow 48 to happen again. But the price is very high. The price is very high number of people who are killed. The price is very high number of people who are injured. The price is very high number of people who are suffering. The price is that we have 5,000 Palestinian prisoners at this time, including 160 children, including 1,005 people who are put in Israeli jails under the so-called administrative detention, which means you can put people in jail without knowing why, without charges, without legal due process. But that will not break us. It will not stop us. But I think it's time to demand and ask everywhere now for imposing immediate sanctions on this establishment. And if the governments cannot do it and will not do it and are hesitant about doing it, I think it should come from the public, from the grassroots and above. But that means there is a great need to explain to people. There is a great need to mobilize, especially younger generation. There is a great need to explain why BDS is very important at this very moment and why it should be used in every possible way. I thank you again for everything you do. This is a short summary of the situation, and I will be very glad to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Okay, Docteur Yutul, vous nous avez parlé de la situation. Pardon. I was ready to speak English, but then. Donc, vous nous avez parlé de la situation en Palestine, des colonies, etc. Mais on voit aussi en Palestine que la jeunesse dans la résistance ne croit plus vraiment à ces partis séparés et que, par exemple, en Naplouse, les mouvements étaient unis, Hamas, Fatah, FPLP, etc. Et vous avez fondé la Mubadara, qui était une initiative nationale pour justement être au-dessus du clivage Hamas-Fatah. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire quelle est aujourd'hui sa position et comment est-ce qu'elle voit l'avenir de la politique en Palestine?
Well, we just had the Mubadara is an initiative that was started in 2002, exactly 20 years ago. It's the youngest political movement in Palestine. And it was established, as you know, by myself, but also by people like Hayder Abdel Shafi, whom you know very well. And he was one of the most decent and most respected leaders in Palestine. And Dr. Edward Saïd, whom I think you know, and also Ibrahim Dakkak, who used to be the head of the national guidance committees that led the Palestinian struggle in the West Bank and Gaza. So and many hundreds of other people participated in establishing it because we thought that Palestinians need a third movement that represent what we call the silent majority, or a certain group of people who would like to see a new political movement. We did very well, as you know, in presidential elections and as well as in parliamentary elections. But the most important thing is that we just had our Congress, and this Congress was the result of 63 smaller congresses that took place everywhere. And the National Congress included people from West Bank, Gaza, and the diaspora as well. And 50% of the members of the Congress were young people. We made a new program. And the most important part in our new program is that Palestinians have the right to resist occupation in all ways. And it also included the demand I just told you, that our goal should not be only ending occupation, but also it should be bringing down the whole system of apartheid in the whole of historic Palestine. And if Israel continues with this, then the only alternative to one apartheid state is one democratic state. And we want to work everywhere, not just in the West Bank or Gaza, but in the diaspora and also in 1948 areas. We do that. We have members there also. And what we are proposing, that the only way to change the situation is through changing the balance of power on the ground and through changing the disparity in power between us and the Israeli Zionist movement. And that can be achieved through, as we call, 6 pillars of struggle. The first one is resistance, and the most important one is Palestinian resistance. Second is BDS. Third, it's Palestinian internal unity. And you know, we have been working very hard, sometimes mediating between Fatah and Hamas. We were the mediators when the national unity government, the only national unity government, was established in 2007, which lasted, unfortunately, only 86 days. But unity for us is important, and that's why we are calling for unified Palestinian leadership. And we do appreciate the role of the PLO as a legitimate representative of Palestinians, but we think it should be opened to include all parties in Palestine and to have a unified leadership in the PLO. The fourth point is unifying Palestinian struggle of Palestinians in the occupied territories, in the diaspora, as well as in 1948 areas. That we should have an integration, and that is happening. We're not making it. It happened in 2021 in an unprecedented way. This unity, I mean, we're trying to bring back the unity of Palestinian national cause, which was unfortunately divided by Oslo Agreement. And you know, many Palestinians in the diaspora were dismayed because they thought that Oslo made the Palestinian issue is only West Bank and Gaza, but that's not right. And fifth, we speak about, in addition to all of that, building a strong international solidarity with Palestine, besides the BDS movement. And finally, we believe that we should work with all the groups, including especially Jewish people who are against occupation and against the system of apartheid. And in that regard, we're very, very impressed with the changes that are happening, especially among Jewish people in the United States, who are more than any other party among Jewish communities are realizing how dangerous this system of apartheid is. So these are our 6 pillars of struggle. I think in South Africa, they were talking about 3 or 4 pillars of struggle. If many of you were also parts of that struggle against apartheid. We want to also bring, I think at the international community today, we are calling for an international anti-apartheid movement. PDS is part of it, but the goal should be a wide anti-apartheid movement in the whole world against this system of racism and fascism we are subjected to. By 2 ways. The first way is to continue to talk to other parties. We were in Algeria with the other groups, and we reached a good agreement, although there were difficulties. But the problem is that some people don't want to implement it up to now. So we continue to do that. But the more important aspect is that we are creating a strong grassroots-based movement demanding elections. We think the only way of solving the problem is through democratic free elections for all Palestinian structures, not just the PA structures, not just the parliament, but also the parliament of the PLO. And that Palestinians, not only in Palestine, but also outside, should have the right to participate in these elections and in choosing their leaders. We have many internal differences, as you know. But I think if we have all the polls that are happening say that if we have elections, what we will have is a really pluralistic democratic system where no single party can have majority. It's not true that they are frightening people that if we have democracy, this party will get majority or that party will get, no, nobody will get majority. It will be an obligatory, pluralistic, democratic system.
Autre question, vous avez parlé des mouvements anti-occupation, anti-apartheid en Israël, donc d'Israéliens. Comment est-ce que vous considérez ces mouvements dans la lutte globale palestinienne?
Say the last part in English. In Israel?
Yes.
I think that anybody in Israel who, whether he is Jewish or not Jewish, can be part of this anti-apartheid movement and can be part of the struggle. The problem we see in Israel is that the groups that are that used to be called peace groups and those who are for Palestinian rights are very small now and much more limited than before. And I think this shift towards racism in Israel is a result of 2 things. First of all, it's a global situation. You have racism growing in Europe, as you can see. And I think the triumph of fierce liberal capitalism have reflected itself in this growth of racism. That's also affecting Israel. And by the way, in my opinion, the shift in Israel towards fierce capitalism was only possible because of Israel's exploitation of Palestinian workers in the occupied territories. They built capital. So this is affecting Israel, but also because Israel is not paying a price for its occupation and oppression of Palestinians, the Israeli society benefits from this situation. They benefit from occupation. They benefit from stealing our land. They benefit from stealing our water. And that's why they go and vote to the right wing and extremism. So unfortunately, the peace camp is so small now. And don't believe the talks that if Netanyahu goes and Gantz come to power or Lapid, things will be different. The internal Israeli opposition, which is strong now to Netanyahu on the judiciary matters, is only an opposition on matters that relate to Jews in Israel. But on Palestinian issue, they have no difference. We didn't hear Lapid or Gantz criticize what is happening by these terrible people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir. They also say there is no place for Palestinian state. They also refused even to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority since 2014. All Israeli governments. When Netanyahu and his group proposed a law in the Israeli Knesset to take away citizenship from Palestinians in Jerusalem and in Israel who are accused of participating in resistance, the Israeli opposition voted with them. So he didn't get only 64 votes, he got 96 votes. And Labour Party, which has 4 seats, left the room. The only people who voted against were the Arab members of the Knesset and one Jewish guy who was from the Communist Party. So unfortunately, I know, you know history when certain countries went into fascism, for instance, or extremism, and the public went with them. I don't think we forgot that history. So, but at the same time, we believe and we think that the participation of Jewish democratic people and Jewish progressive people is essential if we want to bring down a system of apartheid.
Maybe, peut-être que quelqu'un dans la salle aussi a envie de poser une question, si on a encore le temps, parce que moi, je ne suis pas maître du temps. If somebody in the audience wants to ask a question.
Pardon, je vais poser ma question en français. D'abord, merci d'être là et votre témoignage est vraiment terriblement émouvant et impressionnant. On a beau avoir certaines informations par la presse, mais quand on vous entend, c'est vraiment encore plus impressionnant. Ma question est la suivante. Vous avez dit que vous aviez eu des rencontres au niveau de l'Europe. Quand vous faites un tel discours, quelles sont les réactions?
Well, I had different, actually, I cannot say that the reaction was the same from every official I met. It was different. But I can tell you there is a great amount of worry about Israel. Some people say it, some people express it in their body language. But you can see that the atmosphere is full of tension because of what's happening by these extreme Israelis. The normal response that we get about the possibility that the European Union would do something jointly is that certain countries prevent that because you need unanimosity. I don't buy that. I think even if the group cannot do things collectively, they can do it even not as, and they did it few times. There were statements made jointly by France, Germany, Belgium, and other countries. I can say that meeting people is very important, very useful, and should continue. We have to, I think we have a big imbalance here between the number of Palestinians who come to speak to these officials and the number of Israelis who bombard them all the time. But I think the truth and reality is making itself clear. You can't, as somebody said once, I mean, it's a well-known proverb, which is that you can cheat all the people for some time, you can cheat some of the people all the time, but you can't cheat all the people all the time. And I think things are becoming much, much more clear today. The problem is, you know, the main problem, as I understand today, and you should know it as European citizens, is that so many governments in Europe have such strong military and intelligence links with Israel. For them, this is a priority. They don't want to upset Israel. And that's dangerous. But that particular aspect, as I understood, is becoming an obstacle to taking the proper needed positions about this terrible violation that is practiced by Israel. Also, some illusions are still there about normalization with Arab countries. And you know, there is normalizations with some governments, but not with the people. Look at what happened in Egypt, what happens with Jordan. Look at what happened during the Mondial. And I told them that. The most frequently raised flag in the Mondial in Qatar was the Palestinian flag, although we did not have a team there. And the team that carried it more than anybody else was the Moroccan team. So maybe the Moroccan government makes relations with Israel, but the public is not the same. And I think this is Netanyahu's plan. He said it yesterday. He said, I want not only to block the possibility of a Palestinian state. He said, I want to extract from people's minds the possibility of a state by normalizing relations with Arab countries. This will not affect our struggle. It hurts us, but it will not stop us. And I think this whole issue of normalization is exaggerated too much by politicians who think that this way, maybe this will improve the situation. And one other illusion you should not buy, which is economic peace instead of peace. It's not even working economically. How can we have economic improvement in Palestine if we don't have water, control of water? Tell me of a country that could prosper economically without having water, land, control of borders, control of import, control of export, control of its finances. When 70% of our tax revenue comes through Israel, they take 3% commission, and then they cut away any amount they want from our money. Economic peace, it's only a myth.
Quelqu'un d'autre a-t-il une question? Monsieur et puis Paul.
Thank you very much, because in a minimum of time, you have pointed to every important aspect of the story of Palestine since 1948. As I reminded you when we arrived, as I reminded you when we arrived with Colette, we met in 1989 when Colette and I and 10 other people participated in the first medical mission to Palestine. And after that, we wrote a text that was refused by the British Medical Journal without any valid reason, which was after that refused by the Lancet because they had published a few months, 2 or 3 months before, and a critical letter concerning Israel and its policies in Palestine. And they did not want to provoke the ire, the anger of Israeli readers and maybe a lot of Jewish readers. Now, yesterday, I reread for the first time in years what I had written. And I got extremely angry because I realized more than I had in the past few years that there is a continuity in the policies of Israel since the creation of that country. We saw terrible things that absolutely match with what is happening now, but what is happening now is even worse. There is a constant progression to more and more violence and denial of Palestinian rights, and that's extremely frightening.
Alors, il y avait Paul, but first maybe you want to answer.
You spoke about huge progresses in some Jewish communities of the United States. Okay, you understand me? Ah, well, back to French. Est-ce qu'il y a des contacts qui se font entre ces communautés juives qui font leur progrès aux États-Unis et vos organisations?
Yes, we have contacts with them, and we have contacts not only with people in the United States, but in other countries like Britain. I don't think we have enough contacts here, but in Britain and in the United States and in many other countries, there are very prominent and important people who are and we want them to be a very strong part of this anti-apartheid movement.
Merci beaucoup. C'est le même genre de question, mais concernant les contacts, les liens que vous avez avec les Arabes israéliens. Je n'ai peut-être pas bien compris ce que vous aviez dit au sujet des liens que vous avez, des alliances que vous comptiez mener pour arriver à défendre cet État démocratique. Mais la participation des Arabes israéliens me semble évidemment fondamentale. C'est le sens de ma question. Merci.
Yes, this is a very important issue. We are still in the beginning, of course, because, you know, for a whole while, it was looked like Palestinians, PLO, would work in West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem to have a state, and Palestinians in Israel will be in solidarity with the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and they will work inside Israel for civil rights. And Palestinians in the diaspora were left to, be in supporting their people, but the question of the right of return of all Palestinians was not really sufficiently addressed. And many Palestinians in the diaspora felt, of course, left out, especially that they were the ones who participated very heavily in the revolution in Lebanon and in Jordan and so on. I forgot to say that in our program, we say also that the right of return for all Palestinians everywhere should be guaranteed. Not to the West Bank, to wherever they were displaced from. I believe now we are in contact with Arab Palestinian parties in Israel. We have very good relations with them. We coordinate, we communicate constantly. But the model we are talking about is more than that. I say that you cannot talk about civil rights only. If we speak about one democratic state, it should mean civil and national rights, which means you cannot speak about a state where the right of self-determination according to the Jewish state law, that the right of determination is exclusive for Jewish people only. One state means also the right of self-determination for Palestinians. And I think the model we are talking about is where Palestinians, because now if Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch says apartheid is the same for Palestinians in 48 and West Bank and Gaza and in the diaspora, each of them is subjected to apartheid in different forms. But it's one people under one apartheid. Then we should be united in the struggle against this apartheid. So a lot of old formulas have to be changed.
OK, est-ce qu'il y a encore des questions? Alors, monsieur, et puis vous, monsieur là-haut. Je n'ai pas oublié.
Hello, I'm Omar Palestinian, but I will speak in English. It's more easy maybe to translate. I want to just add one states that one of Zionist member in United Nations just last week he's made a statement that they try also to go to United America and inside the Latin Americans, whereas Palestinian have very good movements and they don't have a problem if they are pro-Palestine. And this is one of the dangerous Zionist lobby where they're trying to go inside Latin American to change the situation. For my question, like I want to ask you, and maybe you can give more advice, how can be convince the European here, and especially the people, because we have very low and slow movement from the people against the lobby of Zionists, whereas I feel this when we're trying to do any meeting or a protest, it's very slow and low, and we were fighting and not allowed by the government, and mostly with the I consider as our ties and left parties. There were a lot of them, they are afraid, even the big people of politicians, they are afraid to speak freely because they say the Zionist lobby is very strong here and they are attacking us. And this is one of my problem really to do something in Belgium here. Even I'm just 7 months here, I'm still even in asylum. And
Where do you come from?
Gaza. In Maghazi camp. And I want to do more one statement about this is an advice and it's my idea to start to make a lobby in European Parliament, same as well the Zionist lobby where they are trying to make a power in European Parliament and people here and scare the people, and they try to change the media and the effects and the real what is going on in Palestine.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, I can't give advice, but people here know better than me what can be done in Belgium and in Europe, but I can say two things which I think are useful. First of all, I think the key to success is to work with the younger generation, and especially in universities. And that's, by the way, what the Zionist movement does. I noticed I mean, I'm old enough to see some generational movements in some countries where the Israeli establishment would go to young leaders in youth groups, in parties, and mobilize them, and then they become prime ministers and so on. I mean, they invest in that. So I think we have to work a lot with younger generation, but also I think you have to work with political parties in each country. We have to penetrate that system. Only through that you can build a stronger lobby. You have to be part of the establishment that is working in this country. And we've seen results of this in good ways, and we've seen it in bad ways. So I think these are the two key elements that I would suggest. Now, don't worry about the Israelis, because they will continue to always attack any solidarity movement. And for Israel, I always say that they classify the world, the people of the world, in 4 or 5 categories. The first category is the total supporters of Israel, complete supporters, no questioning whatsoever. These are the good people of the world. The second type are we, the Palestinians who struggle. We are the terrorists. And they classify us as terrorists. And even if we use the most peaceful, non-violent forms of resistance, we are still classified as violent and provocators. The third type of people are people in solidarity with Palestine. That's, I guess, most of you here. You are anti-Semites. Anybody who criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic. But you are not anti-Semitic towards Palestinians. You know, we are Semites too. They monopolize Semitism. They monopolize Semitism so that they can monopolize anti-Semitism. Although one of the Israeli big leaders said anti-Semitism is to try to treat Israel differently from other countries in the world when it comes to international law. That's anti-Semitism, because you're singling out the Jewish people out of the international law. Then there is the fourth category, which is a very important one. And I guess some of you are here belonging to this category. And these are Jewish people in solidarity with Palestinians. These guys are self-hating Jews, as they call them. So this is the way the Israeli establishment classifies the world. I don't care about it. I don't think anybody should care about it. I think it's already an old used formula that makes no sense. And I think the Israeli establishment have abused everything to the level that it has become really so obvious and so ineffective. But one has to be courageous. If you are always afraid of what they will tell about you or of what they will criticize you about, you better stay at home and continue the COVID guarantee. Thank you.
Madame, je viens vous prendre après, mais Madame avait levé la main la fois précédente, je l'avais oublié.
Thank you. My question may sound naive, but what about the neighboring countries, Arabian neighboring countries? Israel is kind of isolated and outnumbered. I don't think you have talked about that. That's just what
No. Israel is not isolated, unfortunately. It was isolated before. But it is isolated by the peoples of these countries. It's not isolated by governments. And Israel abuses the fact that many governments are not democratic. If they were democratic, they would listen to their own people. I'm not very worried about these normalization acts because I know that the people of these countries are with us. And we are realistic. We don't say that we would like to see Arab armies march into Israel, or that Arab countries will fight Israel militarily or even send weapons to Palestinians like is done now with Ukraine. I mean, so many weapons are sent there. We want one thing from the Arab countries: to boycott Israel. Just boycott Israel. We say this is a fascist government. Boycott the fascist government.
Dr. Barghouti, if I understood correctly, you're saying that there's a switch in the focus of the Palestinian platform as to what they're asking for. You're moving away from the two-state idea towards a one-state idea, and within that one state, you would like that one state to be democratic and to fight apartheid, a bit like what happened in South Africa. Do you think that this new focus is something that will bring the different Palestinian factions, Palestinians being not that united, do you think it will bring those Palestinian factions closer together to fight, I mean, to be able to defend this idea? Second idea, imagine that such a thing were possible and that there was a consolidated state. Well, first of all, do you think that the Israelis themselves would want something like that? Isn't there an advantage in the present situation? Another question which joins what the lady said before. If there were such a consolidated state in the Middle East, what would all of the other countries in that region, how would they take that? Even if Israel is making friends now with a certain number of Arab countries like the Gulf countries, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would want a consolidated Israel state in the Middle East. Those are just ideas that came to my mind, and I'm wondering what you were thinking.
Okay, let me take your questions. Three questions. The first one, we are proposing this change. We can't dictate it, of course, but as a party, as a group, as a person, I believe we should not allow the world and Israel to put us in a box called two-state solution while they are taking away our land and destroying our future and feeding an illusion that will never happen. That's why we have to have an alternative, and that's what worries Israel, you know. Israelis want us to be disappointed and totally frustrated that we go into a status of depression, hopelessness. Our biggest enemy is not Israel. Our biggest enemy as Palestinians is hopelessness. And we have to give our people hope. You can't struggle without hope. And that's why if they kill the two states option, which they are doing, we need another hope. I was not against two-state solution in my life, in my political life. But now I cannot cheat myself or cheat our people. And that's why I think, yes, one-state solution brings Palestinians together better, because there are differences between Palestinians also about two-state solution. But I will not now struggle with other parties about one state or two states. We don't need another division. That's why our formulation in our Congress was very, I think, clever. You want two states, you want one state, it's your decision. But everybody should be struggling for three things: end occupation, the right of return of all refugees, and to bring down apartheid. You want to do these three things and still want two-state solution? Fine, do it. Although I think it's impossible, but fine. The difference between us is not between one state and two states. It's about bringing down apartheid in addition to ending occupation. And that's why these three goals, ending apartheid, ending occupation, and right of return, can unify all Palestinians in this formula. Now, your second question about what Israelis agree or don't agree with. Of course, most Israelis don't agree with one state, but also they don't agree with two states. I frequently meet with people and they say to me, but Israelis will never accept one state. I say, okay, do they accept two states? No, two. So no to two states, no to one state. I choose the better no. Sometimes, as a friend of mine, maybe you know his name, Daniel Barenboim, a fantastic musician, who's also Israeli, who is against occupation. He once told me something I keep repeating. Sometimes the impossible is easier than the difficult. And yes, this is a dream. I have the right to dream. Like Nelson Mandela had the right to dream about ending apartheid, like Martin Luther King had a dream, like every person who struggled in his life had a dream. Without a dream, we cannot go anywhere. And that's why I believe we were ready for a compromise which was painful and unjust, which is to have a state in this little tiny place called West Bank and Gaza, 22% only of Palestine, where the United Nations decided we should get 44%. But we accepted 22%. Israel refused that. So even when we accepted that very painful compromise, they refused it. No Israeli leader at any time agreed to have a state in West Bank and Gaza. Not even Rabin. They talk all the time about self-governing authority. And those who said yes to a Palestinian state, like at one point, one of the Israeli prime ministers who was accused of corruption later, Olmert, he did not agree that we will have a state in the whole of the West Bank. They will take away parts for settlements. They will keep the regulation in Jerusalem. They will keep their control of the Jordan Valley. So now it's clear. There is no alternative to one-state solution. Third question. What was the third question? Yeah, well, the Arab countries are accepting some Arab governments, not countries, I would say, are accepting Israel, which is practicing fascism. Why would they reject one-state solution where Palestinians will have the full right of self-determination? Yeah. Mike, will. We'll give it.
Puisque tu parles en anglais, oui.
It will come to you.
Si tu parlais en français, ce serait plus simple. Parler en français, ce serait plus simple. C'est plus simple.
Donc, ma question suivante est inspirée par la conférence du 14 octobre. Vous avez compris? Did you understand? Did this question is inspired the conference that they're going to hold on October 14th. They're going to hold a conference on October 14th about the instrumentalization of Zionism and etc. Ma question est donc la suivante à monsieur. Le fait qu'il est tellement difficile d'arriver à une solution, même celle qu'on a discutée aujourd'hui, est-ce que ce n'est justement pas un outil utile dans ce qu'on appelle l'instrumentalisation du zionisme comme comme excuse à garder un statu quo de façon à avoir l'ennemi perpétuel qui sont les Palestiniens.
I don't know if I understood the question, but I also don't know about the conference, so I'm not aware of it. But as I understood, you are saying that we should concentrate on the Palestinian demand rather than the construction of Zionism. Is that what you are saying? No? Say it in English, please, quickly. What did you say? Yeah. Zionism. Of course. Of course. I don't think you can be Zionist and be on the left, for instance. And I don't think you can be Zionist and at the same time accept Palestinian rights, because Zionism is racism. It's based on racism. It's based on the idea that Jewish people, with all due respect, are better than others, and definitely better than Palestinians, and that this land was promised by God to them. So who can stand against God? I was once giving a lecture in Atlanta when they used to give me a visa to the States. They don't anymore. And a nun stood up and asked me a question. She said, why you are saying this? God gave this land to Jewish people. Are you opposing God? And I said to her, well, if God has given this promise, then definitely he has changed his mind, because why do we have Jesus Christ? And second, I don't think that God is so small that he will think of the land as this little piece of land, which is called Palestine, you know. So, no, I think, I'm sorry to say that maybe some people would disagree with me, but you can't be a serious Zionist and not be racist. It's impossible.
Ok, une autre question ici. Après, madame, après, je viens chez vous.
Bonjour. Vous avez parlé tout à l'heure de... Oui. Non, pardon. Bonjour. Vous avez parlé tout à l'heure de l'importance de la participation des Israéliens juifs et palestiniens d'Israël dans la lutte contre le régime d'apartheid israélien. Quelle est votre position sur le boycott des élections israéliennes? Est-ce que vous pensez qu'il faut voter pour les partis antisionistes et s'investir dans le vote, dans le système électoral israélien, ou est-ce que vous appelez à ce que ces gens en Israël se mobilisent hors des canaux électoraux?
No, I don't think I said that. I do believe that if people are in Israel and they carry Israeli citizenship, they should participate in elections till we change the system, of course. But if you are a Palestinian in East Jerusalem, which was occupied, and they want you to participate in elections for the municipality of Jerusalem, we don't agree with that. Because then you would be accepting the legitimization of annexation of East Jerusalem. That's the main difference. But in the long run, things will not change through elections to the Knesset. They will change if the whole system is changed, where the right of self-determination will not be determined only for Jewish people. That's the main difference. And you know, one thing that Israel suffers from is that, I didn't say that, but why do we have apartheid? I'm sure there are Israeli Zionist leaders who would prefer not to have apartheid because it is so shameful. But the apartheid was the only solution to the fact that they are occupying us, and our number now is exactly equal to the Jewish Israelis in the land of historic Palestine. We are no more a small minority, although we have half of our people are refugees, forced out of Palestine in 1948. Even with that, today our numbers is 7.1 million Palestinians on the land of historic Palestine versus 7.1 million Jewish people. So to keep occupation, they had to impose apartheid. And the only way to have democracy is to end apartheid.
Let's end apartheid.
Alors, les actes commis par les intégristes, I will translate later. Yes. Les actes, pardon, en français ça va. Les actes commis par les intégristes israéliens se réfèrent toujours à la Bible. Hein. Or, à la Bible, ouais. Et donc, il y a une contradiction complète entre les principes de la Bible, parce que la Bible a certains principes de respect de l'être humain aussi, bien qu'il y ait eu la guerre continuellement aussi, qui était inscrite dans l'Ancien Testament, mais il y a quand même des principes humains qui sont à respecter, comme justement une juste mesure dans la réaction, etc. Donc, c'est vraiment une attitude schizophrénique. Et est-ce qu'il y a des études pour montrer vraiment, d'une façon très pédagogique, cette contradiction et cette schizophrénie? Parce que c'est vraiment, c'est-à-dire qu'ils sont fascistes, et ils se plaignent du fascisme et ils l'appliquent depuis 1948. Donc, c'est vraiment, c'est une maladie mentale, quoi, vraiment.
Alors, sachant que les Palestiniens ont été trompés depuis le mandat britannique, pensez-vous que si on faisait un référendum parmi les Palestiniens, ils choisiraient un État ou des États comme solution?
At this time, it's equal. The number of Palestinians who want 2 states and the number of Palestinians who want 1 state. But it's changing. And the younger generation wants 1 state. And the older generation, part of it wants 2 states. But the thing is moving towards 1 state solution. Now, many people think and understand that it is impossible to keep. And what is the 2 state solution? I mean, for them, it means accepting a life of apartheid. But I have to be honest with you also. Also among Palestinians, there is not yet an agreement. What does it mean, 1 state solution? That's a debate we have to have between ourselves.
Y a-t-il encore une question dans la salle? Oui.
Vous avez parlé de la Nakba en disant que ce qui se passe aujourd'hui rappelle la Nakba. Si ce qui se passe aujourd'hui est effectivement horrible et rappelle donc la Nakba, est-ce que ce n'est pas lié au fait que la Nakba elle-même n'a jamais été intégrée comme point de départ de l'État d'Israël? C'est en quelque sorte une faute originelle, une faute de départ qui reste et donc qui en quelque sorte justifie jusqu'à la fin des temps des horreurs d'une certaine manière. Et donc la question est, je sais qu'il y a eu des efforts pour introduire quelque part dans l'enseignement en Israël des éléments de Nakba et sur base des travaux des historiens nouveaux, il y a eu quelques efforts. Mais fondamentalement, la Nakba, c'est toujours un sujet tabou, plus ou moins. Est-ce que c'est comme ça que vous voyez les choses aussi?
I think what Israel is doing is not reminding us of the Nakba. I think Israel is trying to repeat the Nakba and do it to the people of the West Bank. And, you know, some Israelis would recognize that Nakba happened, but they would present it as a mistake. And for me, that's not correct. Nakba was a project, and the project continues. It's a project about eliminating the people, the original people in the land. It's very similar to what happened to the Aboriginals in Australia or in the United States, only with two differences. The first difference is that the Israeli colonial project, it's a colonial project, came late in history. Maybe if they did it in the 17th century, they would have succeeded. I don't know. Second, we're very resilient people. And we will not let go. We will not leave the country. And we learned from what happened in 1948. I think the biggest Palestinian achievement up till now was not done by political parties or factions or groups. It was done by older people like my father and our uncles and aunts and mothers of that generation in 1967 when they decided to stay and even take the risk of being killed. If we had left in 67, like in 1948 has happened, the Palestinian issue would have vanished. So we owe it to that generation of wise people who were ready to take the risk of dying, but not leave the country. And that's where Zionist movement failed. This is the biggest failure of the Zionist movement and the biggest achievement so far of the Palestinian movement.
And don't speak very good in English, and I want to translate. Ah, je le dis en français alors. Alors, ma question est simple. Et je crois que c'est important de conscientiser la population européenne. Alors, en Belgique, nous avons eu des grandes manifestations pour le climat. Et est-il possible de faire une manifestation concernant justement ce problème palestinien, par exemple à Bruxelles?
Je ne pense pas que M. Barghouti va pouvoir répondre au fait que nous allons organiser une manifestation pas à Bruxelles. Sauf si l'intelligence service est avec lui et qu'il va nous obliger à faire une manifestation. Y a-t-il d'autres questions?
I defer the question to you. Yeah.
مش بلا بلا بلا. سؤال بس.
I'm sorry, I want to ask one question. As a European here, I'm not still a European. Will be forever Palestinian. what they can do from now and what they should to do for now, because really I try and I face from even the left parties with my story. I was considered they are our ties. They are a lot afraid to speak about Palestine cause and what's happened. And exactly now we face the Holocaust. It's not attack, it's not like a clashes, and it's very important now, like everybody to start to speak to them parties, to them people, and what you just suggesting, like if we can have more impact and more pressure to put in European Parliament.
What do you do now? Do you do work, and are you working?
My work is just like to go every day to speak for Palestine.
Fantastic. I think the best thing you can do, being a person who just came from Gaza, is to really explain to people what is happening in Gaza. The details of life, what young people face, the fact that 80% of young people who are educated are unemployed, the fact that we don't have clean water, the fact that we don't have electricity except 6 or 8 hours a day, the fact that people that you can go and work in Gaza for no more than $1 a day or $2 a day because this is the only job you can find. I think all these little details are even more effective than giving political lectures. And I thank you for what you are doing. And I think we need more Palestinians like you. Thank you.
Vous avez parlé d'élections et je crois qu'il est vraiment important de donner la parole aux Palestiniens, tous les Palestiniens en Palestine, en Israël et dans la diaspora. Qui voyez-vous capable d'organiser des élections? On a vu des cas épouvantables et je me demande qui pourrait maintenant le faire.
In Palestine? We have to pressure. We have to exercise pressure because there are people in power who are afraid of elections. I mean, what power? It's a very limited power. I mean, it's authority under occupation. But it's important to change that. And it's important to have young, new leadership. And the only way to change, we can't fight each other. I mean, we can't make a coup d'etat, for instance. We are under occupation. And I think coup d'etat is wrong anyhow. The only way is to keep pressuring the establishment to have elections. And we will continue this without stopping at all. We have many things to do. I mean, just before I came, I was very busy with organizing first aid teams now in all the areas that are attacked by the Israeli settlers. We are now creating a whole big operation of building first aid teams and first aid stations in each of these villages. And I mean medical relief. And while we are doing that, we have to also work about the political issues. So it's a combination. You can't concentrate on one thing and leave the other. We have the reality of daily life that we have to face, but at the same time, we know that strategically we have to change the political structure. And the only way to do that is through elections. Of course, they cannot decide, they cannot participate, they cannot have a say. That's exactly what the young people feel about. Yeah.
Je crois que nous arrivons au bout des questions. Je voudrais vous remercier chaleureusement, Monsieur Barghouti, et vous souhaiter bon vent pour votre retour en Palestine. Et merci beaucoup à Hope d'avoir organisé cette conférence. Merci à vous tous aussi.